Thank you so much
Yeah.
for being here again. But will you just, obviously we're showing this to aspiring entrepreneurs and students at BYU who are looking to explore all the different industries that the business world offers. Will you
Okay.
walk us through your personal professional journey and how you are at where you are today?
Oh man. How much time do you want me to go on this? It's a really long story.
The ball is in your court. We would love to hear anything.
Yeah. So I mean the topic is entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so here's an interesting thing. For me personally, uh when my first sort of experience with entrepreneurship, I was 10 years old.
Wow.
And I lived in Iowa and had moved there from California, so we had snow for the first time. And that winter, 1970,
Hmm.
my brother left one day and then came back like 10 hours later, left with a snow shovel,
Hmm.
and came back later on and he had 20 bucks. And I was like, dude, how do you do that? What happened? We have no idea what this
Yeah.
this was a thing. And so he told me, well, you just go shovel walks. You just go walk up to the door and say you want your walk shovel. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. So I basically started a company. So this is the weird thing. My brother would just like see a need, grab a need, go do a thing,
Yeah.
make the money. And
Hmm.
I was like, I hired two guys, you know,
Wow. At the age of
and
10?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I mean, we didn't have formal contracts or anything,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I basically just hired a guy and two guys, and then we went around. And for me, anyway, personally, I mean, I think there's different motivations for entrepreneurship. There are people that just they yearn so much to solve a technical problem that's their quest, right? For me, it was always about the team formation, about the creation of,
Yeah.
those dynamics and working within that group. And then what I found was we went around and we shoveled walks all day. And when I got back, I realized I had not made as much money as he had. Um, but apparently for me, it was, you know, the way I liked to roll.
Yeah.
Later on, I found that you could do a lot of really, really interesting things. Like, there was a phase back, I don't know, 20 years ago or something, where family decided we really, really needed to have an RV. All this relates, but the tech stuff is more fun, but
Yeah.
these are like interestingly formative. We need to have an RV. So I started thinking about it, and I decide what I really need to do then is just start an RV rental company. And it was kind of like back in those days, that was my phase. Get an idea, start a company. And
Wow.
now you go buy the RV. Now it's a tax write-off also because it's a
Yeah.
business expense. You start renting it out and create some maintenance, and figure out like where the margins are, what's the upside downside.
Yeah.
Um, I had a book I was doing on some technical stuff that I did in infrared data communications and did research on the publishing versus self-publishing, right? Getting a publisher versus self-publishing.
Mhm.
Learn the principles, right? And that's kind of the key is at the end of the day, there's a market and you're trying to reach the market. And if you can nail that market, then the market's going to reward you. And if you can't reach the market, it's not. And most of the reasons people give away their equity or they give away their leverage or their property or whatever is in an attempt to reach a market that they otherwise don't really know how to do, or they know how to hit a market, but they don't know how to provide the service.
Mhm.
So they're going to give a bunch away, to do that.
Yeah.
So in the case of this one, I did some research and realized that the main reason you need a publishing company to back you is because they can reach the distribution.
Yeah.
I knew in that particular instance that I had an inside lock on the worldwide distribution of everybody in the world that cared about that technology. So I didn't need it. So I self-published it,
Yeah.
and created a publishing company with my own ISBN number. So anyways, it's been a funky habit of mine
Yeah.
over the years, you know what I mean? Just get an idea and then go do the thing. Some of the stuff that Dave and I worked on,
Mhm.
Dave Brown from Tech Transfer, um, that came out of my time at BYU. So I was on faculty at BYU for 15 years.
Okay.
I had to leave because I can't have a beard. You know what I mean?
Really?
No, no. I mean,
Oh,
no, yes, really, I can't have a beard. No, that's not why I
that's
left.
not why you left. Okay.
No, but it is convenient. It is quite convenient to not have to worry about that,
Yes,
honestly.
that would be nice.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So no, we actually did three disclosures in the BYU tech transfer dynamic
Yeah.
faculty that are, so I was in the computer science department,
Hmm.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
Um, so I did, oh, can I just say one other thing?
Yeah.
It's just really interesting. Throughout the 80s, I had startup companies doing software stuff back, it's so, let me say this. Let me say this. I think it's important for everybody to hear.
Yeah. Absolutely.
A lot of times you second guess. It's hard to know what is interesting and what is innovative.
Hmm.
I remember in the late 80s when I was doing a thing where I had to do I built a word processor in Turbo Pascal actually for the original sort of IBM PC, whatever it was at that point in time.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember at the time feeling like, what do you do? Because what's the next big thing? Because all you can really think of is what you've sort of seen.
Yeah.
And the hardest part of entrepreneurship is to get yourself out enough forward, out in front of all that.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of like, I don't know, has everything already been done? I
Yeah.
mean, 1980, seven, has everything been done? And, and it's really, really hard to kind of just set your mind free, you know, to go do that stuff. So anyway, that's kind of a thing. So I actually did a bunch of startup companies and always was doing that. With Dave, I did a nonprofit
Hmm.
corporation that spun off out of BYU. At BYU, it was called the Internet Safety
Hmm.
Podcast, turned into a project that spun out as a nonprofit. I did we had a patent that we licensed. It
Yeah.
was a patent for RFID and Bluetooth and embedded stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody's interested in that stuff. And that licensed out to somebody who acquired the license to the patent.
Hmm.
And then the other one, the biggest one, was Kinpoint,
Yeah.
which was a genealogy thing. Um, what's interesting, the original thing we did at BYU never really materialized into something big and profitable, but a follow-on product that we did that was called Take a Name,
Hmm.
which is an app that helps you, for an LDS market, helps you take names to the temple, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you know about this
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah. I
but
looked
what's interesting is we did that. It was 2017 was when we released that. So that's been, I guess, 7 years, like
Yeah.
right now. And we have right now an installed base of over 600,000 users
Wow.
and a monthly, and you're like, yeah, 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 but nobody uses it, right? No, we have 150,000 unique visitors per month, unique users
Wow.
of the app, right? By visitor, they've got to hit the servers so we
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
we can ping, who's done what. Anyway, and that was one that was more kind of service than anything else, was
Yeah.
never meant to be a big moneymaker.
Hmm.
We definitely lost money on that, but felt like we were doing a good thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
in terms of those of us that built it. But I don't know, that's kind of like a big ramble.
Yeah. No,
Uh,
no, thank you.
but I just want to say one more thing, Ellison,
Yes.
about just being an entrepreneur, to recognize, and then I'll take your next question.
Yeah.
To just for all
No.
the wannabe entrepreneurs, there's part of me that just goes, my gosh, save yourself.
Yeah.
Just save yourself the struggles. You know, you've got to have some fire in your belly,
Hmm.
and you have to want this fight. You
Yeah.
have to want this fight. And people who are like, I want to be a startup guy, I want to have my own company because I want the freedom and the flexibility.
Yeah.
Then you're like, oh my gosh, what
Uh-uh.
drug? What drug are you consuming? And there's an old adage that, in the back in the 80s and 90s, that in Silicon Valley, the entrepreneurs had all the freedom in the world because they could work any 80 hours a week they wanted,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
total flex.
Yeah.
And the reality is that's, you can't kind of, you don't become an entrepreneur because you want a lifestyle company.
Yeah.
Now, if you kill yourself, there's a phase where you can pivot and become a lifestyle company. Although most people that actually do that, the Elon Musks, the Jeff
Yeah.
Bezos, the Bill Gates, the Steve Jobs, they're so consumed with that process that even though they make it successful, they were never in it to not kill themselves.
Yeah.
So they never bailed out to go not kill themselves.
Yeah.
They always just kept adding new projects.
Hmm.
All of those guys did.
Yeah.
And here's the principle to just keep in mind: if there's like a takeaway that you could put on a 3x5
Yeah.
card and
Yes.
staple it on your forehead, it would be this: that Dr. K says, that the market is a relentless teacher. The market is a relentless teacher. Okay. The
Mm.
market wants to teach you all the time.
Yeah.
And it might teach you things like you suck at this,
Yeah.
or you really need a financial person,
Mhm.
or these people are not the people that are going to take you, you know, the
Yeah.
market's going to teach you. And then the other thing that goes along with that is that every time the market teaches you, it charges you tuition. Okay. And
Yeah.
when you're in the entrepreneurial space,
Yeah.
the tuition is mandatory. The learning is optional. And if you're smart and you're going to be successful as an entrepreneur, you know you're going to be paying tuition. And by that I mean, I'll give you one story, and then again I'll pivot and let you
Oh,
ask a question.
please. This
I
is
was
perfect. This is amazing. Take it
I
away.
was having lunch, um, having lunch with a friend
Yeah.
couple years back, like-minded entrepreneurial fella, and he had this, a tech guy, and he had this shirt on, and like a polo shirt, like a
Yeah.
logoed polo shirt,
Yeah.
and it had some weird like I'm like, what's with the, I know he's a tech guy, and this was not a thing. And he goes, oh no, that's an interesting story. And that's another thing is the currency, the coin of the realm in entrepreneurship is war stories. The
Mhm.
number one thing you acquire over time is scar tissue, which teaches you like
Yeah.
you begin to become aware
Yeah.
that like, yonder there be dragons, like there's
Mhm.
things to, you don't know all the answers, but you know some lay of the land.
Yeah.
So he says, he goes, now this is an interesting story. This shirt cost me $50,000.
My
Right?
word.
You know, and I can tell you, if you get into the game, that's not a big, and then he says, and I laughed, and he goes, and he was laughing, and he goes, one of my less expensive shirts, right? And his point was, the shirt symbolized this project he'd got into, burned his time, burned his money, burned his resources. Nothing comes from it.
Yeah.
90% of all startups fail,
Mm-hmm.
badly. And
Yeah.
that's on the least definition of success, that really make it. So you're going to go be everything you think you're going to be, 1%, couple
Yeah.
percent,
Yeah.
you know? And so the number one thing that happens is the tuition, the learning, the scar
Mhm.
tissue, the relentless attack
Yeah.
every day, tilting at windmills every single day, relentlessly, knowing when to quit, but also not quitting when others do,
Yeah.
right? How do
Yeah.
you know
It's
when
hard
you're
to
just
navigate.
crazy,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? When you pass crazy into stupid, or when you pass stupid into crazy, or when it's like, no, no, this is going to be the thing. And
Yeah.
at the end, you pop out and you either win or lose, and the market charges you.
Yeah.
And then you acquire that knowledge. And if you can be relentless about that
Hmm.
and do 10 startups, your chances of success now just rose,
Yeah. Yeah.
assuming you're learning,
Yeah.
in between all the failures. Anyway, I've been rambling,
No.
but these are just sort of like the entrepreneurial nuggets.
Hmm.
Um, what it, I'm going to let you. I'm going to stop talking for a sec.
Oh,
Uh,
that was amazing. I mean, just hearing you talk, I'm coming up with questions that I didn't even plan to
hit me,
ask.
hit me.
But now that you were just talking about how, you were talking about where's the threshold? Like, do I keep going as an entrepreneur? Do I stop? Do I quit when they're quitting? You talked about that fire and you also talked
Yeah.
about tuition that needs to be paid and the 90% failure. What would you tell an aspiring entrepreneur who may not, A, have the funds to pay
Mm.
that tuition, if that makes sense? Like, where do they begin financially? And also, what are some determinants of being able to understand, okay, I need to stop, this is going to fail, or I need to keep going, let's push through.
Yeah. Oh man, these are great questions. Really, really great questions. One thing I would say, so my world is tech. Just understand
Yeah,
there are startups with a very low barrier to entry. So
yeah,
you can understand what's the barrier to entry, right? When we built Take a Name, I think that our actual expense basically to build Take a Name, again, it's 600,000 users, so fairly successful on that measure, not a lot of money.
yeah.
But I'll bet we went into it maybe $500,000,
Wow,
to build an app.
wow.
You're like, well, just to build an app? Well, no, right? There's infrastructure, there's
Yeah,
underlying stuff, there's these like, we have a server that was so well built and so well designed that it's been running like for seven years, basically without a failure. So, I mean, some good
Yeah.
software. But I'm just saying, building tech is really expensive. It's really, really expensive. And I've seen folks, I want to just bookmark Law of the Harvest,
Yeah.
but I've seen young entrepreneurs and they've done audiobooks. They've listened to 20 audiobooks on entrepreneurship and they're ready to go. So they take their last $5,000 and they try to pay somebody to build, you know, a web page.
Yeah.
And they're now broke. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a complete failure to understand the law of the harvest
Mhm.
and what the steps are. The law of the harvest is not just, that you sow what you reap,
Yeah.
but it's breaking out what it means to reap, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you own the property, you got to own the equipment, you got to till the land, you got to respect the weather, you've got to get the seeds, you've got to do the weeding, you've got to do the ammonium, whatever in the soil.
Yeah.
The sowing is not just like flat, flat, then all of a sudden I reap.
Yeah.
There's this elaborate, crazy thing. And then at the very end,
Mhm.
if you're not horribly unlucky, there'll be a harvest. And then you've still got to deal with the market prices.
Yeah.
So the law of the harvest in entrepreneurship is all of that,
Yeah.
not just, so there's a lot of folks, they haven't paid the price to read. And I prefer hard copy. I love Audible. Okay. I listen to a lot of books, but I don't listen to business books or tech books on Audible because I want to have the book and I want to write all over the margins
Yeah.
and go to school constantly, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that, failure to understand what the cost of doing this thing is actually going to be.
Yeah.
Um, People will say things like this. They'll say, if I'm sitting over here in Traverse Mountain, right?
Yeah.
Right here on the mountain. Like if I could, if we could just move 1%, just 1% of that mountain, and put it over there in that lake,
Mhm.
you know, how much that would be worth? And you're like, cool, got it. What is your plan
Yeah.
to move
Execute it.
1% of that mountain over into that lake? You know,
Yeah.
you got to be able to say, here is a machine, a business machine, a market machine, a product machine. There's a machine. You have to understand how when I push a button here, over here, somebody takes a dollar bill out of their pocket and decides they're going to give it to me. You have to understand that machine. You can't just speak in vagaries about it's $1 trillion market. Great. You have no idea, right? You have no idea how to touch it. I understand it's big and so do you, but you've told me nothing. The question is, how do I get somebody? And you've got to, and if you can't have that empathy,
Mhm.
that sort of, looking out to see what is the thing that would induce somebody to give me a dollar bill?
Mhm.
How do I touch them? Now, when we did Take a Name, we did a really, really deep, elaborate empirical study and research on whether there was a market for that
Mhm.
product. By the way, we were the fifth company to do it, the
Wow.
fifth entity to do it. They'd all been failures. One of the failures was actually a friend of mine. I'm not going
Yeah.
to name the company or the friend, but I remember when we were releasing Take a Name at Roots Tech in 2017, and I bumped into him. And he goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, we got Take a Name, blah, blah, blah." And he goes, "Good luck." Okay. And I'm like, "What does that mean?" He goes, "There's no market for it." And he had a bunch of reasons. LDS people are cheap. That's
Yeah.
broadly true.
It is.
Um, and he's like, "We did it. We spent $1 million, did a thing, blah, 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 sold 5 copies." He basically tells me, great friend of mine. Okay.
Wow.
Really, really good friend.
Yeah.
I've had lunch with him recently. Um, and and it was interesting because he brought it up. He goes, "How many taken?" I said, 600,000. Well, yeah, what about the monthly? And he goes, "I still don't know how you did that." So that was just, because they literally sold like 5 copies and
Yeah.
folded the
Wow.
product, right? So the other thing to understand is that it's you have to understand whether there's a market. Most of the time, entrepreneurs start a company by what my business partner and I refer to as getting high, smoking your own ideas. Okay. You're basically just over there, you're just rolling fatty with nothing but your best ideas. You haven't done
Yeah.
any validation. You have no idea if there's a market. You have
Yeah.
no idea if there's anybody with a dollar bill with
Yeah.
your name on it. You have no idea, but you like this thing.
Mhm.
So you start smoking your own ideas and you amp yourself up, but you've done no validation of whether there's even a market
Yeah.
and what the market looks like. not just the magnitude, but how they will give it to you,
Hmm.
right? And so we did all that research and we're absolutely confident. And in fact, we even had we estimated our research told us um, it was insane what our research told us the product was worth, and we wouldn't even believe it on like a per install or on like a per donation per
Yeah.
purchase kind of basis, because conventional wisdom was that nobody's going to pay more than $1 for a smartphone app, period, no matter what. And anyway, we had some estimates that were quite a bit higher than that.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, we at least know there's something there. And when we were done, we had done enough of our research
Yeah.
that in the first year, the donations to the app fell within 20 cents of what our research had predicted it would be going in. So we didn't burn, the hundreds of thousands of bucks. I'm talking not just sweat equity, but actual dollars,
Yeah.
to build this thing until we really knew that there was a market and how it was going to, you know, how it was going to spread. The other thing I want to just say one thing about bragging on Take a Name, the 600,000 users,
Yeah.
never advertised.
Wow.
We
No
cut, we were,
advertising?
no, zero advertising. And the reason we were building ads and getting ready to roll, the problem was twofold. There were people at Family Search that were not comfortable with us doing anything that smacked of commercialism when the product was about the temple. You can argue that one, you can debate it,
Yeah.
but there was a perspective, right? That was the other big one was that we were dependent upon their servers and we were bringing so much traffic that we were threatening to crash their servers on a regular basis. If we had actually amped it up with advertising and like doubled the traffic overnight, um, you know, we would have been in trouble because we would have been crashing their servers. So we were dependent on that infrastructure. But I'm just saying the interface. So this is the last thing about this part, because I know we're getting close on time. And we can do this again.
Yes.
Obviously, I
Yes.
have stories to tell.
I know. I already have more questions to ask. So,
But the other one to just keep in mind is that it's not your product, the effectiveness of your product is not just the checking of a bunch of boxes. And so if we've got this feature list, that we somehow that market will be the path to our door. Or the infamous there, if we just had this a new feature, that would be the one. And by the time you get 12 features, the 13th feature isn't going to save you. What you mostly need if you've got 12 features and you're dying, you probably need 5 and have them be the right ones
yeah.
and have them be ones that release the right brain chemicals in the cerebral areas of your customers, right? When you've got that, it's not about check boxes, it's about emotional experience.
Mhm.
It's about when I see this thing, I'm just like, oh my gosh, and I have to have it.
Yeah.
Um, One last real quick pinpoint story. We actually had people like this happened dozens of times where people would mail us. We didn't even advertise our mailing address.
Yeah.
People would mail us a thank you card with $100 bill inside.
Okay.
Well, how's that? What is that? That just that never happens. I was so it's like, oh my gosh, people really love what we've done here. Maybe it's worth all the money we lost.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, because the emotional experience was so strong, they were so grateful that this thing addressed their monetizable customer pain
Yeah.
so concretely. And I think that everybody gets so excited to get a company going that they'll do anything that seems reasonable instead of the actual thing that's going to make people just brain chemical and pull their wallet out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, keep going. Next question.
To go off of that, see, I wrote some questions, but now you're just talking and I'm getting off track and wanting to ask these questions. But
Yeah.
to go off of that, you talked about how you didn't necessarily make money off of that app. Like it wasn't one of your very highly profitable companies, but you did get these gratitude cards. How do you navigate doing something that's good for individuals and for humankind, but it may not be the most monetized company, if that makes sense?
No, that's a great question. And it's so personal. You know what I mean? It's so
Yeah.
personal. I remember so my business partner and I, we would joke because we really had lost a lot of personal money, right? And not to mention time.
Yeah.
And again, we were trying to do it because we were trying to do a good thing.
Yeah.
And we weren't fundamentally obsessed with that. And we were doing other things that where we were making other money. And, we could sort of, it wasn't like easy peasy, but it was something we could pull off. And sometimes, I remember one day we were sitting there, Jonathan is his name. We were just sitting there and we were frustrated with how much we put in
Yeah.
and how little we were getting out financially, even though people were gushing and loving us, right? And Jonathan goes, you know what we need to do? We need to just make a game, just a game. I'm like, what kind of game? He's like, I don't know, man, just like a game about a fish. And I'm like, what color's a fish? He's like, blue. And so it became our running joke, like, because we could probably make $1 million if we
Yeah.
just built a game about a blue fish.
Yeah.
We'd probably be home free at this point. Instead, we're going to try to go like, you know, save our kindred dead, and just lose our shirts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then really, we were just kind of like, and it became a running joke for like a year or so. The game about a blue fish. And what's really fun is we'd go out to lunch and we would like we couldn't stop like specking. So
Yeah.
what's the fish do? What's his motivation? Why does the what does he where does he live? Well, and we would literally like spend many lunch hours
Yeah.
like figuring out what the fish would do
Yeah.
and why people would want to give us money for this, you know. And we actually got pretty excited. We got actually, I mean, seriously, I swear, we got a little excited about the Bluefish game and came kind of close to pulling the trigger and just doing it. But we had two other things. Okay, next question. We're probably getting close on time, I bet.
Yes, I would love to visit again. We'll be in contact. But to wrap it up, let's just close with some general advice, whether that's podcast to listen to. You talked about how you like to have a hard copy. If someone is trying to just get involved in the entrepreneurial aspect of the business industry, what would you recommend they do? Like, what do you think is the best value of their time as they begin their
Oh
journey?
man, yeah. So first thing is just read the world, read constantly, read. And I didn't like prepare my list. Good to Great by
Mhm.
Collins is a really good book. The Lean Startup, Eric Ries is a really good book.
Yeah,
There are so many books. Understand the subject matter, understand the market, understand, viral growth, understand, understand epidemiology,
yes,
how do viruses grow out in the real world? What is the path, understand the analogous fields
yeah,
that you can borrow ideas from. You want to understand viral social media growth, you should study epidemiology.
yeah,
You know what I mean? If you want, you know what I'm saying? There's so many different things. So I would say you have to be a voracious reader and a voracious learner, a
mhm,
relentless, obnoxiously voracious learner.
yeah,
Right. And I'm not talking about taking, I have a PhD in computer science.
yeah,
I'm not talking, that was a long time ago. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, you know, and then another thing I'll do sometimes, if I really love a book,
mhm,
I'll take every paper and book referenced in that book and I'll read all of those,
yeah,
like buy all the books that book referenced,
yeah,
then read those books
yeah,
and or the academic papers or whatever that book references. If I really want a deep rototill
yeah,
in the space, at the end of the day, if you can say, I know we're getting close.
yeah,
Somebody once asked me with one of the projects I was working on, what stops big company X from
mhm,
simply just seeing what you've done and knocking it off?
yeah,
Right? Just not in a week, they can just go build it. Okay. And my answer at the time, and I think it was flippant, but I think in the end it was right.
yeah,
I said, nobody at company A has read the 50 books I've read that have led to the ideas that generated this thing.
yeah,
Apart from all of that, even if they could knock it off and do what I did, they don't know what to do next because there's no law of the harvest.
yeah, yeah,
They don't know all that went into why that's a thing. They
yeah,
know that it's a thing. They see that it's a thing. They value it, but they can't reproduce it and they can't evolve it because
yeah,
they don't know what to do. And the industry's full of that, right?
yeah,
Company takes over some other company and then everybody gets stupid. Why
yeah,
is that?
yeah.
This is why that's a thing.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for your time today. That was
Yeah,
a very, very insightful 30 minutes, and I am excited to be able to share this with all of the people that are looking forward to hearing from you. So, thank you so much.
awesome.
We will be in touch, and I hope you have a phenomenal day.
Okay, you too. Take care.